So picture a highly specific scene for a second. Think about, the ultimate 1980s corporate triumph.
Oh, man. I can already picture the shoulder pads.
Right. Exactly. But let's set the date. It's March of 1982, and you are standing in the living room of this massive luxury apartment.
Okay, I'm there.
You're looking out through these floor-to-ceiling windows directly over Chicago's Gold Coast, and down on the street, parked right at the curb, sits your brand new Porsche.
Classic. I mean, that is the literal definition of arriving in the 80s.
It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, your credit rating is completely flawless. You hold this highly respected, super high-powered career as an account executive at Merrill Lynch.
Right, the top of the food chain.
Exactly. You've just recently moved to this huge financial hub from the Detroit suburbs, and you're just driven by this absolute conviction. You possess the intelligence, the drive, the raw talent to completely dominate the financial markets.
You're the master of the universe, or at least you think you are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly the mindset. But now take that exact same mental image, that whole triumphant scene, and fast forward the tape just 8 months.
Just 8 months. That's really fast.
It's incredibly fast. And in that time, the luxury apartment on the Gold Coast, it's gone. The
Yeah.
Porsche, repossessed. Your credit rating is absolutely ruined.
Wow. So everything just evaporated.
Literally everything. The rising star from Detroit is suddenly filing for personal bankruptcy.
I mean, an 8-month timeline for a total collapse of that magnitude, that indicates something way deeper than just a run of bad luck.
Right,
It really
right.
points to a systemic failure in like the entire operating system that individual was using to navigate their environment.
And that lived reality, that exact crash, belonged to Mark Douglas. He's the author of The Disciplined Trader. And that's exactly what we're getting into in today's deep dive.
Yeah, his findings on the psychology of failure are just absolutely fascinating.
They really are. Our mission today is to essentially deconstruct his work and explore why the very traits that guarantee your success in society, the things reinforced from childhood all the way through corporate America, will actively destroy you in the financial markets.
And we're also going to dig into the framework he built out of that ruin, right? The 16-part masterclass series he designed to rewrite that fatal programming.
Exactly. So to understand this, the central thesis here is that we basically have to dismantle everything you know about effort, reward, intelligence, and just, the fundamental nature of rules.
Because the cognitive scaffolding that supports us in a structured society, it literally becomes the mechanism of our own destruction in an unstructured environment like the market.
Right. So let's unpack the specific profile of Mark Douglas before his collapse. We can call it the Mark Douglas paradox.
I like that. The paradox of the high achiever.
Yeah, because we are looking at an individual with super high intelligence, really intense drive, and a proven track record of manipulating his environment to succeed.
Which is exactly what you want in a traditional corporate setting. I mean, say you're managing a complex mergers and acquisitions deal. Those traits aren't just nice to have, they're prerequisites.
Exactly. If you hit an obstacle in that world, what do? You apply more analytical power, you leverage your network, you negotiate harder.
You basically force the outcome through sheer willpower.
Right. And there's a really interesting neurological underpinning to that behavior, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about how the brain wires itself. When a high IQ individual uses their intellect and willpower to overcome a really complex problem.
Like closing that corporate merger.
Exactly. When they close that deal and get a massive financial and social reward, the brain heavily myelinates those neural pathways.
Wait, heavily myelinates. Just break that down for us.
Oh, right. So myelin is this sort of insulating layer around your nerves. When you repeat a behavior that gets rewarded, your brain basically paves that pathway with myelin, making the signal travel faster and more efficiently.
Oh, I see. So it becomes like a superhighway in your brain.
Exactly. It creates this deeply ingrained feedback loop that says application of dominant will equal survival and success.
And society conditions this over decades. You learn that your intellect is essentially the master key to any closed door.
Right. So naturally, when an individual like that approaches the financial market, they see it as just another complex system of closed doors.
So they assume their master keys will work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can outanalyze a team of rival corporate lawyers, you'd think you could outanalyze a simple price chart.
But that's the fatal flaw. It's a complete misclassification of the environment. The corporate world is a social construct.
Meaning it has rules.
Yeah, human rules, hierarchies, the capacity for negotiation. But the financial market, It operates much closer to a law of nature.
It's an environment with zero boundaries, right?
Mhm.
Zero rules, zero mercy.
None whatsoever. When you try to force a market outcome using sheer intellect, you are basically attempting to negotiate with a natural force.
Which is impossible.
Right. I mean, you can't argue with gravity. And you definitely can't debate a collapsing asset price. It just doesn't care.
Okay, let's visualize this because there's an analogy here I want to run by you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a champion mountain climber. This person have elite physical conditioning, unparalleled problem-solving skills on, vertical stone, and they have all the state-of-the-art gear.
So they've got the pickaxes, the spiked boots, the chalk.
Exactly. They are the absolute master of their specific environment.
Right.
But now, take that heavily equipped champion and drop them straight into the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, wow. That is a terrifying image.
Right. Their instinct, because it's been honed by years of reward, is to apply their elite skills. So they swing the pickaxe at the water. They try to find footholds in the waves.
And obviously the very tools that made them a champion on the mountain are exactly what will drag them to the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly. The effort actively accelerates the drowning.
That is a perfect analogy because that shift in environmental physics is exactly what Douglas realized, but just, too late.
He brought his mountain climbing gear to the ocean.
Yeah, the high IQ professional, conditioned by all these social victories, sits at a training terminal and attempts to outthink a collective natural force.
So they try to assert their will upon it.
And the harder they swing that pickaxe, the more they overanalyze or revenge trade or just forcefully inject capital to prove that their thesis is right, the faster the account liquidates.
So the rules of the social world are not just unhelpful here. They are the active mechanism of their ruin.
Completely.
Which begs the question, if the tools of societal success are actively harmful, how does an individual alter their fundamental approach? I mean, you can't just casually command your brain to forget decades of, as you said, myelinated survival conditioning.
No, you really can't. It requires an extreme intervention. And that's where the source material introduces this really fascinating concept, the firewalking methodology.
Okay, so this is where it gets intense. And Douglas isn't using firewalking as some kind of cheap parlor trick here, right?
Not at all. He uses it as a precise parallel for extreme mental conditioning. It really demonstrates the biological override you need to survive an environment that totally contradicts human instinct.
Okay, so picture this. A person stands barefoot at the edge of a bed of glowing red-hot coals. Every single cell in their body, every evolutionary instinct, and every societal lesson dictates one singular survival-based belief.
Which is, hot coals burn human flesh.
Right, which is obviously a highly rational belief.
Yeah, it's a protective biological imperative. Avoiding extreme heat prevents cellular destruction in the physical world. It keeps you alive.
But Douglas presents this physiological paradox. If a firewalker steps onto those coals while still retaining that everyday belief,
The absolute certainty that the heat will destroy them.
right, if they believe that, their autonomic nervous system reacts to the belief itself. They experience profound fear.
And that fear triggers a very real physiological cascade. Your muscles tense up, your stride falters.
And because of that tension, they hesitate on the coals for just a fraction of a second too long.
Exactly. And that hesitation, which is born entirely from their belief, is what actually results in severe burns.
So the belief itself essentially manifests the physical injury.
It does. So to successfully cross those coals, the firewalker has to perform this profound psychological intervention.
Douglas calls this a complete mental house cleaning, doesn't he?
Yeah, mental house cleaning. The individual has to entirely suspend their everyday rational beliefs about heat and pain and human tissue.
They have to shift their perception so completely that the heat is no longer categorized as a threat.
Exactly. They have to change their reality in that moment to survive the walk.
So let's map that mechanism directly back to a retail trader sitting there looking at a candlestick chart. I mean, obviously, there is no physical heat radiating from a laptop screen.
Right, no actual fire.
So what constitutes the hot coals in the trading environment? And how does failing to perform that mental house cleaning result in, a burned account?
Well, the hot coals represent the inherent uncertainty of price movement. Every single time you allocate capital, you are exposing yourself to potential loss.
And loss is painful.
Very. But if you approach that exposure with the societal belief that losing money is a threat to your survival or your ego or your identity.
Which is just like the firewalker viewing the coals as a threat.
Exactly. If you view it as a threat, your amygdala initiates a fight or flight response. You experience the financial equivalent of muscle tension.
So how did that tension manifest in trading?
You hesitate on your entries. You prematurely close out winning positions because you have this desperate need to secure the reward. Or, and this is the most destructive one, you freeze in a losing position.
Paralyzed like a deer in headlights.
Yes, unable to execute a stop loss until the entire account is completely decimated.
Okay, I have to push back on this concept of suspending belief and just bending to the market.
Let's hear it.
Because the market is essentially an aggregate of millions of highly aggressive participants, right? Including these sophisticated institutional algorithms that are designed specifically to hunt retail liquidity and trigger stop losses.
Sure, those forces exist.
So doesn't yielding to that just make you passive prey? If I suspend my defensive beliefs, aren't I basically just walking blindly into a financial meat grinder?
I get why you'd think that, but that's actually a fundamental misunderstanding of what yielding means in this specific context.
Okay, clarify that for me.
Yielding does not mean becoming passive. It definitely doesn't mean abandoning your risk management. What it means is yielding your ego's demand to control the outcome.
Oh, okay. The ego.
Yeah. Those algorithms you mentioned, they're just mathematical realities of the environment. They're like ocean currents.
And you don't fight a riptide by swimming directly against it.
Exactly. If you swim against the riptide, you exhaust yourself and you drown. You yield to the reality of the current, you swim parallel to the shore, and you survive.
So in trading, yielding means what exactly?
It means accepting that any individual trade has a completely random outcome. You have to alter your perception so that a loss is no longer processed as a threat or a personal failure.
It's just the statistical cost of doing business.
Right. You strip the emotional charge away from those flickering numbers on the screen.
But doing that requires abandoning probably the deepest, most foundational rule of human society.
Yeah.
The correlation between effort and reward.
Yes. And this is exactly where Douglas introduces the concept of the failure gap, which is really the epicenter of all this psychological trauma.
The failure gap. Let's dig into that because it exposes this stark contrast between the physical, social world and the completely unstructured reality of the market.
Right. Because in the social world, survival is built on a direct causal relationship between time, effort, and compensation.
Let's establish a high-level baseline for this.
Yeah.
Say you are an associate at a top-tier law firm. You know exactly how the system operates, right?
Oh yeah, the path is very clear.
You bill 80 hours a week. You sacrifice your weekends to pore over millions of discovery documents. You apply immense cognitive effort to build this airtight case.
And the reward for that is linear and totally predictable. You make partner, you secure a massive bonus, you win the trial.
Effort dictates the outcome. More effort equals more reward. And the human brain just craves this structure, doesn't it?
Craves it. It relies on it for pure sanity. It is a predictable equation. But the trading environment violently severs that equation.
Brutally.
In the market, effort is frequently, and I mean frequently, irrelevant to the immediate outcome.
The sources detail how this literally breaks the mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you can spend 12 grueling hours running complex technical analysis, cross-referencing macroeconomic data, managing your risk profile perfectly.
Doing everything right.
Right. And then you execute the trade, and some random, unpredictable news event drops the asset price instantly. You lose thousands of dollars in seconds.
Massive concentrated effort results in immediate pain.
Exactly. And the inverse scenario is what truly dysregulates the brain's reward system.
Oh, the inverse is a psychological nightmare.
Yeah, the inverse being a trader who is totally distracted, doing zero analysis, and just impulsively clicks buy on some random asset purely on a whim.
And secures a massive, life-changing profit.
Zero effort, infinite reward. How does the brain even process that?
To understand the neurological damage there, we really have to look at behavioral psychology, specifically operant conditioning.
Okay, break that down for us.
Think of the corporate world like a vending machine. You put in $1, you press a button, you get a soda. It's predictable, continuous reinforcement.
Cause and effect.
Exactly. The financial market, however, operates like a slot machine. It uses what's called variable ratio reinforcement.
Wait, isn't that the exact mechanism that drives gambling addiction?
Precisely. When rewards are distributed on a randomized, unpredictable schedule, completely divorced from the amount of effort you apply, the brain's dopamine system just goes into overdrive.
It creates this massive state of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, because the brain absolutely demands a causal link. When you put in massive effort and lose, and then put in zero effort and have a massive win, your internal model of reality shatters.
So the brain desperately tries to build a bridge over that severed connection.
It has to survive.
So if logic and hard work aren't dictating the outcome, the trader just starts fabricating structures, right? They invent superstitions.
Oh yeah, they start believing they have some magical intuitive feel for the market.
Or they engage in revenge trading, trying to forcefully apply effort to extract the capital the market just took from them.
They're essentially attempting to reconstruct the vending machine out of the parts of a slot machine.
That's a great way to put it. They bring their societal pickaxe into the ocean, determined to chop the water into a solid surface.
Which is impossible. And this desperate need for structure brings us to the core danger of the market. It is an absolute vacuum.
Yeah, let's examine the scaffolding of society for a minute. Because we are constantly supported by external structures that dictate our behavior, whether we realize it or not.
Corporate hierarchies, legal frameworks, traffic systems, social norms.
Exactly. These invisible guardrails, they restrict our freedom, sure, but they also protect us from our own destructive impulses. A boss dictates your deadlines. A bank limits your credit.
But the market offers no scaffolding whatsoever. It is entirely unstructured, and it possesses absolutely zero power to control you.
It will not instruct you when to initiate a position. It won't advise you on position sizing.
And crucially, it will never force you to exit a catastrophic trade. It'll just let you bleed out.
So the terrifying reality of absolute freedom is absolute responsibility.
Yes. Without those external guardrails, the only barrier between a trader and total financial ruin is their own internal discipline.
And most individuals lack that internal architecture entirely because society has always provided it for them.
So in the absence of structure, what do? They revert to their ego's default setting, the refusal to define a loss.
When a trade moves against them, they start treating the price action like a social debate. Let's push on the mechanics of that debate for a second. Because if I'm an intelligent, successful professional, my entire identity is built on having superior data and outlasting my opponents in a negotiation.
You're a winner.
Right. So when the screen flashes red, my instinct isn't to say, oh, I'm wrong, take my money. My instinct is to say, the market is currently mispricing this asset. If I average down and buy more, my superior analysis will eventually be vindicated.
You want to be proven right.
Exactly. So how do you convince an individual whose entire life is built on being right to simply yield to a screen?
You have to redefine what the screen actually is. Douglas defines the market as a force of collective belief.
A force of collective belief.
Yeah. Every single tick of a price chart is the instantaneous aggregate of millions of global participants expressing their belief about value at that exact millisecond.
It's a fluid, continuous force.
Exactly. So attempting to argue with a collective belief using your logic or your superior data is fundamentally absurd. The market is agnostic to your intelligence, your Ivy League degree, and your financial modeling.
It's like arguing with the weather.
Perfectly said.
I mean, if you step outside and a torrential downpour begins, you don't stand in your yard holding a meteorology degree, screaming at the clouds that the predictive models only indicated a 10% chance of rain.
Right. You don't try to average down on the weather.
No. You accept the reality of the rain and you open an umbrella.
Yet in the financial markets, brilliant individuals stand in the rain screaming at the clouds until they literally drown.
Because yielding to a loss in the social world often carries this huge stigma of defeat or weakness or intellectual failure.
But yielding to a loss in the market is the ultimate act of self-preservation. You really must recognize that being right in the market is an illusion.
You're never right or wrong.
No, you are simply in sync with the current flow of collective belief, or you are out of sync. That's it.
Okay, but recognizing that intellectual blind spot is one thing, right? Awareness does not automatically equal behavioral change.
Not at all. Knowing you shouldn't put your hand on a hot stove doesn't rewire the brain's response to the heat.
Exactly. So how does an individual systematically rewire a brain that has been heavily myelinated by decades of this societal conditioning? We need a practical mechanical intervention.
And this is exactly where Douglas transitions from theory to application, particularly within the framework of his 16-part masterclass series.
Right, the masterclass. And this entire series seems to hinge on one very specific concept: tuition capital.
Yeah, if the 16-part masterclass provides the structured curriculum, tuition capital is the laboratory where the neuroplasticity actually occurs.
It's the practical bridge across that failure gap we talked about.
Exactly.
So let's detail the mechanics of tuition capital. From the sources, it requires isolating a specific limited pool of funds, right?
Yes, a totally separate pool of money.
But the mandate for this capital is completely counterintuitive. It is deployed entirely devoid of the goal of making a profit.
Its sole purpose is to purchase behavioral discipline.
That's fascinating. It requires a total redefinition of success and failure. Because in the social world, an increase in capital is the ultimate metric of success.
More money equals winning.
But under the rules of tuition capital, the monetary outcome is completely irrelevant.
It's hard to wrap your head around at first.
It really is. The sources make this stark distinction. Let's say you execute a trade, the asset price surges, and you close out a massive profit.
Sounds great, right?
Right. But if you broke your predetermined entry or exit rules to achieve that profit, that trade is categorized as a catastrophic failure.
Even though the account balance increased, you failed.
Why? Why is it a failure if you made money?
Because you just reinforced a toxic neural pathway. You rewarded erratic, unstructured behavior.
You fed the slot machine.
Exactly. The brain registers that rules are optional and that gambling produces a huge dopamine hit. And that pathway eventually will lead to ruin.
Okay, so conversely, let's say you enter a trade and the market immediately moves against you, but you execute your stop loss precisely according to your predetermined risk management plan.
You take the loss exactly when and where you stated you would.
Right. In Douglas's framework, that trade is categorized as a flawless success.
Even though the capital decreased.
Exactly. Wait, I'm catching myself agreeing too easily here. Let's dig into the chemistry of that for a second.
Sure.
How does losing money, which we established triggers the amygdala's threat response, suddenly become a success just because I followed a rule? Doesn't the pain of the loss just completely override the satisfaction of following the rule?
That is the exact friction point of the reprogramming initially. Yes, it feels incredibly painful.
So how do you get past that pain?
The objective of the masterclass exercises is to forcibly shift the source of the dopamine release. In the beginning, the trader gets dopamine from profits.
Which is natural.
Right. But through the strict application of tuition capital, the trader forces themselves to derive a sense of pride and accomplishment from the flawless execution of the rule, regardless of the financial outcome.
So by systematically executing stop losses and consciously framing them as successful adherence to a plan, you're actually chemically rewiring the brain.
You're teaching the amygdala that a controlled loss is not a threat to survival. It's actually the proper functioning of the internal guardrails you were building.
It's the equivalent of a powerlifter entering a gym for the first time.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Yeah, think about it. The societal ego-driven urge is to walk in and load the barbell with hundreds of pounds to demonstrate immediate competence and strength to everyone in the room.
You want to look good. You want to win.
Right. But if they do that without mastering the underlying mechanics, their form will completely collapse under the heavy weight, and they will sustain a catastrophic injury.
Just like blowing up a trading account.
Exactly. So the tuition capital phase demands that the trader pick up a completely empty barbell, just the 45-pound bar.
Nothing else on it.
They must stand in front of the mirror and execute the exact mechanical movement pattern thousands of times. And they have to resist that burning ego-driven desire to add weight to the bar.
Because until the form is perfect and unconscious, adding capital only amplifies the underlying behavioral flaws.
The masterclass emphasizes this heavily. Until you can follow a predefined rule consistently without the slightest temptation to deviate, you are biologically unequipped to handle real profit.
Because if you add financial weight before the mental house cleaning is complete, the unstructured vacuum of the market will literally crush you.
So by detaching from the monetary outcome, you basically reclaim control over the only variable in the market you can actually dictate.
Which is your own behavior.
You stop attempting to predict the unpredictable ocean, and you focus entirely on building your own internal ship.
Which leads us perfectly to the ultimate synthesis of Douglas's work. The source material contains this profoundly unsettling realization. The market is a perfect mirror of your internal state. It doesn't give you what you want, it gives you exactly who you are.
It gives you exactly who you are. That is heavy.
It is. It strips away all societal camouflage. If your internal state is disorganized and reactive, your equity curve will be a chaotic series of spikes and crashes.
And if you operate from a state of fear, If you're hesitating on those hot coals, your results will just reflect a slow bleed of missed opportunities and paralyzed losses.
The reflection is inescapable.
It really is. And, if you are sitting down to navigate an unstructured challenge, whether that's a trading terminal or a completely open-ended creative project or even a massive life transition, the mandate is clear.
Stop swinging the societal pickaxe at the ocean.
Exactly. Your energy must shift away from predicting the external environment and focus entirely on the rigorous management of your own internal reactions.
Because mastery of that empty barbell ensures that when the weight is finally added, the structure holds. The profits become a byproduct of disciplined execution rather than the frantic goal of a dysregulated mind.
We began this deep dive by looking at a high IQ corporate star in 1982. We watched an 8-month collapse dismantle a life built on forcing the world to bend to his intellect.
The market repossessed the physical assets because he brought the absolute wrong operating system to an environment that operates on natural law.
Which leaves us with a final concept to examine today. We've established how academic intelligence and the capacity for complex argumentation can be massive liabilities in the market.
Huge liability.
But apply that mirror to the rest of human interaction. Consider the deeply ingrained desire to be right, the absolute demand to win the argument, to force the narrative to agree with your brilliance.
The ego's constant demand for validation.
Exactly. If the market perfectly reflects the destruction caused by the need to be right, where else is that exact same mechanism quietly bankrupting you?
That's the real question.
Where in your daily life are you standing in the rain, screaming at the clouds, refusing to yield to a reality simply because it contradicts your superior analysis?
When the environment changes, survival requires the suspension of old beliefs. Sometimes the only way to navigate the coals or the ocean is to stop fighting the elements, quiet the ego, and surrender to the reality of the terrain.
Consider the cost of your master keys. Until next time.